The author of this novel, The Help, is Catherine Stockett. Born in 1969 in Jackson, Mississippi, she earned her undergraduate degree in English and creative writing from the University of Alabama, then moved to New York, where dedicated herself to write the book. Currently, she lives in Atlanta with her daughter. Stockett took 5 years to write The Help, her first book, whose publication was rejected by over 60 publishers before finally being accepted. Catherine believes the reason is that the greatest fear, rather than the theme around which the book revolves, was the fact the topic was dealt with by me, a white woman who did not even live that historical moment. Since 2009, with its publication in 35 countries and 3 languages, the novel has become a bestseller. In 2011, The Help was adapted into an Oscar-winning movie. The manuscript is set in Jackson in the 60s. It was the period of apartheid, of Martin Luther King, and therefore of civil rights claims for blacks. 2 of the main characters, Evelyn and Minnie, narrators of the story, are colored women who work as maids in the houses of whites, taking care of their children as well. In return, they receive very little money and are often treated with no respect. The first one, a middle-aged woman who has looked after 17 white women's children and lost her son because of an accident, works for the Leopold family. The second one, Evelyn's best friend, is an excellent cook with a gruff and polemical attitude that does not spare her employees either. The third narrator is a white girl, Eugenia Skeeter-Phelan, whose dream is becoming a writer. She distinguishes herself from her white friends because she has different aspirations and a gentle nature, although she begins to stand less and less the treatment of African Americans. Skeeter's revolutionary ideas are not shared by her mother either. However, she cannot stand by and watch as she witnesses all those injustices. She messes with her white peers and ends up being marginalized from the important society. Then, she starts spending time and making friends with the 2 black women, proposing them a very risky project. Telling in a book the attestations of the African American maids living and working in a world of whites, which will be able to be published and therefore read by everyone. They can find the courage to put on paper their anger, their pain, their powerlessness, their having always to succumb and remain silent, the absence of rights, and accepting to go out on this adventure. They live in fear of being discovered and suffering the terrible consequences, but they also feel a slight feeling of freedom that for them becomes everything. I believe that the movie, directed by Tate Taylor, is all things considered well done. Nevertheless, I have noticed some rather significant differences. The movie begins with a flash-forward that there is not in the book, and in my opinion, it changes the writer's desire to tell the story in a linear way. The absence of the use of the first-person narrative, except for Evelyn, changes Stockett's will as well, as the public is not involved in the same way. Moreover, the description of some characters is different in the movie. This is the case with Skeeter's mother, who in the film is more loving and understanding with Eugenia and even proud of her conduct. However, in the novel, she is much more strict. Furthermore, in the manuscript, the mother is described as a prematurely aged woman because of her serious illness, with thin hair and extremely skinny. On the contrary, in the movie we are presented an attractive and healthy woman, made up, wearing a headband. The visual impact is the exact opposite. In the novel, Evelyn secretly gives teachings to the children of the Leopold family, aimed to convince them that there is no difference between whites and blacks. That is not shown in the film, and because of this, in my opinion, the representation of Evelyn's character is not complete. Also, little importance is given to the extreme realism of some of the narrated facts. Minnie has to help her mistress Celia Foot, who for the umpteenth time has a miscarriage, throwing the fetus into the toilet, but the harshness of this act is not shown in the movie. I decided to examine this novel because the movie trailer had captured my attention. I was not wrong, even though, as I was saying before, the book was more engaging and exciting to me. I chose it mainly because it deals with social situations which, although are not as serious as they used to be, nowadays we are still facing and fighting them, and therefore they are still existing to all intents and purposes. The dominant theme is the racial segregation and discrimination of the 60s, which is highlighted by the treatment that white families give to their black maids, who only must obey. A real master-slave relationship. Colored people are not only considered inferior because of their race, compared to the white and pure one, but also carrier of diseases that can lead the master race to death. That is why Haley Holbrook, the most respected and feared white woman in town, persuades the other women to have a specific bathroom for servants built in their homes, to avoid the spread of diseases, and no matter if the costs are too high for some families, it is the right decision to make to preserve their health. This subject matter is also dealt with in the scene in which the bus driver is forced to stop because the road is blocked. The blacks are obliged to get off and continue on foot, while the whites can be accompanied as close as possible to their homes by ringing another road. Even though racial segregation is an apparently distant page in history, even now, with the new implications on immigration and emigration, the intolerance that often leads to racism seems to keep increasing. An issue that is completely current is violence against women. In the story, Minnie is victim of verbal and physical abuse from her husband Leroy, and, in spite of her character, she can find the courage to free herself and her children from him only at the end of the story. If even today too often women are dominated by men in a society that does not seem interested in this issue, it was almost impossible for women from that time to get rid of the men who mistreated them. This is linked to social and occupational inequality between men and women. White women must not work, they can get their hair and nails done, and their main aim is finding a man to marry off with and pumping out babies. They are women who are completely subordinate to men, that are the only ones who deserve the position of head of the family, providing for wife and children. The exception is Eugenia Skeeter, who, however, despite having a job, is paid a lower salary than a man for the same job. Finally, in contrast to what I have been saying so far, the innocence of white children is evident. They love their second moms, especially because they are the only ones who really take care of them and show them affection, as happens in the Lethal family. Children do not see any difference between whites and blacks, and Abilene makes every effort to ensure that this remains the case for as long as possible. Another example is Eugenia herself. In turn, she was mainly raised by her maid, who she really loved. In fact, she was able to understand the girl much more than her own mother.